Have the Trump attorneys argued their case during the hush money trial? Donald Trump has been silently sitting in a New York courtroom for almost 4 weeks as state prosecutors presented the nation's first ever criminal case against a former president. To strengthen their case, attorneys from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office have called a number of well-known witnesses and presented dozens of secretly recorded interviews and papers. They contend that in order to prevent a sex scandal from impeding his presidential campaign in 2016, Mr. Trump authorized a hush money payment to an adult film star. He then approved an illicit reimbursement plan to conceal the payment. 34 charges of fabricating business documents are refuted by Mr. Trump. On Monday, Michael Cohen, the prosecution's last witness, will be subjected to more cross-examination before Trump's attorneys can offer their defense. Experts in law agree the prosecution has done a good job. Nevertheless, they admit that a conviction in the intricate felony case is far from certain, especially in the presence of strong evidence and testimony. Every item is present, however, is its presence undeniable, stated Julie Rendelman, a former prosecutor from Brooklyn. I don't know, she went on, it only takes one juror. Organizing the narrative, even though the focus of Mr. Trump's case is the payment he made to Cohen, his former fixer, the prosecution took the court through the events leading up to Cohen's $130,000, £102,000 hush money payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels during the first several weeks of the trial. David Pecker, the former National Enquirer publisher, was the first of them. He detailed a sequence of meetings that took place in Trump Tower, wherein he, Mr. Trump, and Cohen devised a scheme to stifle unfavorable reports about Mr. Trump during his presidential campaign, including those pertaining to alleged sexual encounters. According to former Manhattan prosecutor Lance Fletcher, his testimony was significant. This hasn't destroyed his reputation in the slightest, and he entered there with the impression of being Trump's friend, according to Mr. Fletcher. So I think he comes off as almost an impartial witness. Prosecutors then contacted a number of others, including as Hope Hicks, a former Trump advisor, and Daniels' former lawyer Keith Davidson, to confirm the information. Professor John Coffey of Columbia Law School commented, "They sort of connected a fascinating novel about how all of these characters interacted, and that was wise. In order to support the accounts of witnesses, they also included supporting documentation such as meeting logs, recordings, and receipts of payments made with hush money to a doorman at Trump Tower and Playboy model Karen McDougal. Starr observes air secrets. The most eagerly awaited witnesses, including Miss Daniels, were introduced by the prosecution through weeks of narrative and supporting documentation. Lawyers for Mr. Trump put a lot of effort into limiting Miss Daniels' testimony. Judge Juan Merchan informed the court that although prosecutors promised to be cautious when questioning her over the alleged sexual encounter at a hotel suite in Nevada in 2006, she nevertheless occasionally proved to be an unruly witness. Trump has refuted reports that he had sex with her. Legal analysts speculated that her frank evidence may have paved the way for an appeal after Mr. Trump's team filed multiple unsuccessful mistrial petitions as a result of it. Others, however, countered that the context illustrated why Mr. Trump would be willing to pay a high price for her silence if it meant keeping his campaign afloat. I felt that she went too far with some of the salacious details, Miss Rendelman remarked. But at the same time, the argument for the prosecution is the more salacious it is, the more Trump would want it to be shut down. Miss Daniels was ultimately limited to testifying about the events that preceded the hush money payment. They were forced to rely on a dubious witness for the behind-the-scenes reimbursement. A convicted felon who has just turned to bashing Mr. Trump for a profession. Cohen takes a composed and serene stance. Earlier this week, when Mr. Trump's longtime fixer-turned-enemy, Michael Cohen, took the stand, the public gasped. Many expected the same persona that wrote venomous social media rants criticizing Mr. Trump, whom he had previously threatened to kill. But they were taken aback when the man speaking in the blue suit and tie did so. As Cohen described his decades-long relationship with Mr. Trump, he seemed calm. He has a measurement. Diane Kiesel, a former Manhattan prosecutor and justice of the New York Supreme Court, said of him, "He is reflective. He has not let any bias or animus for Mr. Trump show through." After serving as Mr. Trump's personal attorney for 10 years, Cohen told the court of his early infatuation. He expressed regret for the low points as well, such as lying on Mr. Trump's behalf. Experts stated that his calm demeanor strengthened the prosecution's case, and that the first day's shoddy cross-examination by Mr. Trump's attorneys strengthened his testimony. Experts told the BBC that Mr. Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, looked clumsy at first and occasionally stammered throughout his questioning. However, on the second day, Thursday, he seemed to make progress, raising questions about some of the facts of Cohen's testimony, such as a phone call Cohen made to Mr. Trump's bodyguard in October 2016, during which he claimed to have discussed specifics of the hush money payment with the president. It served as a reminder of Cohen's credibility, which analysts claim to be one of the main issues facing prosecutors. Cohen is a convicted felon who served time in prison after being found guilty of multiple counts, including lying before Congress, as the defense team repeatedly emphasized. Given that Mr. Trump had first-hand knowledge of the hush money payment reimbursement system, Cohen was able to provide testimony that was crucial to the prosecution's case. Cohen alleged that Alan Weisselberg, the former chief financial officer of Donald Trump and current inmate on Rikers Island for perjury, chose to categorize reimbursements from Mr. Trump's account as legal costs. Cohen claimed in court that he saw Weisselberg receive the go-ahead directly from Mr. Trump. Prosecutors showed the dozens of checks, ledgers, and invoices at the center of the 34-count indictment as Cohen was speaking. Yet not every juror might be persuaded by Cohen's tale. "You are relying on a witness who, in many respects, comes with a larger load of baggage than others," Rendleman stated. "It makes it a bit more difficult to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Making the connections, the prosecution still faces more difficulties." The Manhattan District Attorney's Office took a rather different tack when they raised the accusations of fabricating company documents to a felony, stating that Mr. Trump did so in order to cover up another crime. Prosecutors must demonstrate intent, that is, that Mr. Trump unlawfully altered records to support his campaign, in order to establish their case. It seems that other witnesses supported this. Cohen testified in court that he wasn't thinking at all about his wife Melania. This was all about the campaign. Prosecutors, however, have to explain to the jury this relationship. Essentially, they have to connect these payments to a motive that links them to a campaign, said Ms. Kiesel. "This requires a summation of a lifetime, because you really have to connect these dots." According to Mr. Fletcher, witnesses maintained that the hush money payment and reimbursement was not made in order to shield Mr. Trump's family, and prosecutors were successful in doing so. "This was all about the election," Mr. Fletcher stated. "If I were to place a wager, it would be on a belief. However, I don't believe it's a given." The jury selection process may ultimately determine the outcome, according to experts. Out of hundreds of applicants, 12 members and 6 alternates were chosen based on their political philosophies and level of familiarity with Mr. Trump and the case. Jurors are frequently unpredictable, according to Ms. Kiesel. "It only takes one person to decide that the people have not met their burden," she stated. "The people have 12 jurors to convince."